Though, let's talk to Rick Gates, as a former deputy campaign manager for Donald Trump. A very good afternoon to you.
Good to see you, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. So, how significant is this visit for Donald Trump? We know he's a big Anglophile. We know he loved the late Queen. We know he loves the pomp and circumstance. But how significant for him will be having a second, supposedly historic invitation to come and have a state visit to this country?
Well, as you know, he likes making history, and this certainly sets that banner for him having a second state visit. And look, he knows this. There's nobody that does pomp and circumstance and pageantry better than the Brits. And I think that the way that the British government, in conjunction with the royal family, the planning of this event was actually done very well. They have obviously learned a lot about Donald Trump over the years.
Yeah.
They bring him in. They do a lot of the pageantry up front. They do a lot of the feel-good moments, meeting the king and queen, meeting the princess of Wales. And then they go into the second part, which is obviously talking about the tough stuff, tariff negotiations, Gaza, Ukraine, all the kind of bigger ticket political items, but in a way that they can get Donald Trump in a very good mood. I suspect that was a big part of the strategy, is how can we make the president happy going into those tougher discussions. So yeah. I think today, while I look at the schedule, it's a packed day, it's a full day. I think it is exactly a type of day that the president will very much love and revere.
I mean, there's no doubt at all that, as poor Zelensky learnt to his cost, you know, Donald Trump likes quite a lot of sucking up, doesn't he? Is it demeaning? I know a lot of people who don't like Donald Trump here in this country, who are very critical, whether it's London Mayor Sadiq Khan or others, or indeed many leading members of our own government who are sort of having to suck it up today. Is it demeaning to Britain to roll the red carpet out and to do all this and, you know, put the King and Queen and the Prince and Princess of Wales on show to do this? Is it demeaning, or is this just how real politics works? He's the most powerful man in the world. We need his, we need economic benefits, security and defence benefits from him, and that's just how things work.
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, this is about what it's going to take to get what the British people, the best thing for the British people, whether it's through the trade negotiations or a special relationship with the United States. Donald Trump's been very tough on the British government at times, rightfully so, in our opinion, on this side of the pond. But I think this is an opportunity for those bonds to be, I think, reforged to a different degree. So I think it's absolutely warranted. And look, at the end of the day, I think this is one thing that the Brits do very well, regardless of who's in office, where they're in office. It is important to respect that office. You guys know tradition better than probably anybody in the world. Yeah. And so I think there is an element there that makes absolute sense. Obviously, there are degrees of what you can do with a visit. This is actually, I think, going way beyond what maybe some other state leaders might get. Yeah. But given the relationship between our two countries, I think it's absolutely warranted.
That's how it works. Yeah. I must correct myself. I said I've seen a helicopter landing in Windsor Castle's grounds. In fact, it was the first of 3 helicopters called security. The helicopter that is landing right now is the one that is carrying the president and his wife Melania. They are arriving, and we know that the door was just partially open for the aides to sort of gather the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, to come out to meet the president and his wife, of course, who arrived in the UK last night. There's been a little bit of a furore, and some 4 arrests have been made, Rick Gates, last night after images of Jeffrey Epstein were plastered all over, sort of shone all over Windsor Castle. It was breaching. I couldn't work out what they'd been arrested for. We talk about free speech in this country, but it was a heightened security, and it was an unauthorised activity around Windsor Castle. It just showed that actually not much proper good security at that point last night. A big question mark over that. But the Jeffrey Epstein issue is still a big issue in America. Donald Trump keeps saying, look, this is non-story, it's not interesting. But we've got, basically, this week, we've got the king, whose younger brother clearly had close associations and stayed with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted of his child sex prostitution. Basically, we've got Keir Starmer. He's spending the day at Chequers with Keir Starmer, the president, and Keir Starmer just in a huge heap of hot water right now over his decision to appoint Peter Mandelson, best friends, Petey, he was known as, to Jeffrey Epstein. Again, a good friend of his, remained a good friend after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of those crimes. And of course, claims about Donald Trump and the claims about this, his contribution to a 50th birthday book and the like. How embarrassing and how damaging is this for the president, if at all?
Well, look, I think this is the first week we in America would say that the spotlight has been taken off of Jeffrey Epstein here and put back in the UK, largely because of the sacking of Peter Mandelson,
Yeah.
but also given the royal visit and the fact that, Prince Andrew is front and center on this issue. Look, I don't think this issue is going away. It's clear in the United States that it has become a major issue. However, there are obviously other bits and pieces within the news, the Charlie Kirk assassination, the royal visit, et cetera, that are going to kind of, I think, deflect some of the attention away, but it is going to come back. Until these issues are resolved, a lot of questions are answered. I think this issue is going to be around for quite some time.
Indeed. Well, we know security, you mentioned Charlie Kirk, security has been massively ramped up after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a big, MAGA influencer, hugely supportive of Donald Trump and a very big figure. I mean, I think for most Brits, I think younger Brits would have been very much aware of him, but most Brits probably unaware of just how famous and how influential Charlie Kirk has been on the right of American politics in recent years, and horrific shooting of him dead. And now yesterday Tyler Robinson, his alleged killer, made his first court appearance in a suicide vest to prevent him from committing suicide, to be able to use it to hang himself. He has apparently not been cooperating with the police, but he was turned in by his own family to the police, and it's emerged that a possible motive may well be that he's in a relationship with a man identifying as trans, who was his roommate, and that he'd become quite politicised, particularly on the internet, over trans and gay rights. How concerned are you about the radicalisation of young people, particularly it does appear to be on the left in America and indeed over here in the UK?
Very concerned, and this is what we've talked about, the impact of social media. If you look at Mr. Robinson's background, you look at his family, his stability, everything that he had in the sense of being normal, and then wondering at what point he was radicalized and what those drivers were to radicalization. And when you start peeling back the layers, what you learn is that social media was a major component of it. Where was he getting his information? Where is he getting these types of positions that he began supporting? When did the hate start? And we're seeing this all across America. I mean, this is not the first individual that's been radicalized. We have all sorts of different types of radicalization, whether it's religion, ideological, or others. So I think there is a overwhelming concern in America about how influenceable our youth are. And that goes for other countries as well. I'm just speaking specifically to what we're seeing here in the United States. And that is of grave concern. And how do we break through this? How do we get to a point which exactly what Charlie Kirk would have wanted? Let's start talking about political tolerance instead of political violence.
Well, indeed. Just to break in there, Rick Gates, the Donald Trump and Melania have landed. Their helicopters landed at Windsor Castle. They've just been greeted right now by the Prince and Princess of Wales. It's quite interesting, actually. Both women in very sort of muted colours, sort of burgundy and purple, and the two couples walking. Melania's actually, I'm sure all the photographers are furious because she's wearing a hat that virtually covers her entire face. The photographers will all be freaking out about that, but they've been greeted. The weather's not looking great, and they're just about to head to the front steps or the back steps, wherever they are. Trying to work out the exact location they're at, where the King and the Queen are waiting to meet with them as well. We're going to have a horse carriage procession through the estate to the castle. But we know that Donald Trump was very excited about Kate being involved in this trip, wasn't he?
Absolutely. He's very excited about the full participation of the royal family, but I think Kate in particular, given her earlier health concerns and her role back inside government and what an influence she's going to be, moving forward within the royal family. And I think it's fantastic that she was able to attend and participate. And there's no doubt Donald Trump and Melania Trump as well will look at that.
He'll want the glamour, won't he? Well, actually, they've just walked to the back. This is the back of Windsor Castle. The lawns where the helicopter has landed, and Kate and William have escorted the President and the First Lady to meet with the King, of course, Donald Trump described as his good friend, and the Queen, and the King and Donald Trump are now walking together, and obviously there's been a lot of protocol, a lot of shaking of hands, and they will of course have that horse-drawn carriage procession. Just one final question I want to ask you, Rick. We've had the announcement of £30 billion worth of deals with US tech giants, including Alphabet and Microsoft and the others. A lot of people are questioning, because some of these involve AI. what has Britain offered in return to get these big deals, to sort of as part of the, the economic benefits of this trip that Keir Starmer can trump, and indeed, what are we going to hear on things like, tariffs on steel? We're facing 25% tariffs on exports to the US for steel, 50% for most of the world, but still hugely damaging tariffs. What sort of deals are going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think the AI is by far the biggest one on the pinnacle. I think if you look at what President Trump wants to do with AI, what we've done with it in our country, that is going to be front and center. I know that was one of Peter Mandelson's big issues before he was sacked, and so I think it'll be interesting to see if some of that carries on. But certainly a lot of the steel, aluminum tariffs, I think it'll be very interesting to see how today goes, how it's viewed, what the U.S.'s position coming into these tariff negotiations were, and then watching the outcome tomorrow. Will all of this today soften Donald Trump's position on several of those key issues with respect to Britain? And I think it's very important for Keir Starmer and his government. They're going to have to make some choices. Are they going to be more focused on trade and tariffs and the impact and helpfulness for the British public, or are they going to focus more of their time and attention on things like Gaza and Ukraine, which the president will not be as interested in? Yeah. This should be about making good deals on behalf of the British people. Let's see what the British government does.
Very interesting. Ricky, so appreciate your time. Former Deputy Campaign Manager for Donald Trump in 2016.